passerby could almost mistake it for a neatly arranged electronics store, maybe with some retro-styled cameras for sale. But this is actually a museum, and when you look closely, you'll see why. It features what it calls extinct media, recording and computer equipment from decades past. While you can't really shop, you can stop into this nostalgic destination in the Japanese capital. The venue's been open since 2023. Video production veterans might remember Betacams and a few of the other Sony devices from back in the day, but some of these items predate all of us. Consider a Japanese film camera from 1916. Most of the artifacts on display were donated. All of them can be picked up and held by visitors who are charged about $12 to get in. One man who brought in a handheld watch and some cassette tapes said even if he kept them at home, they'd probably just be thrown out when he died. That it's better to share them with people and let them enjoy what used to be cutting-edge media. Thank you for setting aside time to watch the world from A to Z. I'm Carl Azuz, grateful to host a show for the best audience in news. Next topic, some hopeful news out of the Middle East. A ceasefire deal has been made between the nation of Israel and the militant group Hamas, which controls the Palestinian territory of Gaza. If the agreement holds, it'll stop the fighting between the two sides for at least 6 weeks after it takes effect. Their most recent war began in October of 2023. On the 7th of that month, Hamas launched a terrorist attack against Israel, killing more than 1,200 people and taking roughly 250 others as hostages. Israel declared war on Hamas the next day and launched a campaign of airstrikes and eventually a ground operation in Gaza. The territory's health ministry, which is run by Hamas, says tens of thousands have been killed there. It doesn't say how many are Hamas fighters and how many are Palestinian civilians. Israel and Hamas have repeatedly blamed each other for their failure to reach a lasting ceasefire agreement until now. Many leaders, observers, analysts, and citizens worldwide are hopeful this is the beginning of the end for the latest conflict in the Middle East.
The relentless fighting in Gaza between Israel and Hamas is about to cease temporarily. Following months of negotiations, Hamas and the Israeli government agreeing to a deal that will pause the fighting and see a phased release of hostages seized from Israel during the October 7, 2023 attack. The significant ceasefire, coming at the 466-day mark since that attack on Israel, may be the longest of the war so far. The agreement calls for a 6-week end to the bombing, for Israeli troops and Hamas militants to lower their weapons, and for 33 Israeli hostages to be released during the first phase of the pause. 7 of the remaining hostages are American, 4 of whom have been confirmed dead. Some of those Americans will be released in the initial phase. In exchange for the hostages, hundreds of Palestinian prisoners will be released by Israel, including those convicted of killing Israelis. News of the ceasefire brought hundreds to Tel Aviv's Hostages Square. Sources familiar with the matter saying the ceasefire and hostage release, the first since last November, could begin as early as Sunday. In Washington, Brian Abel reporting.
On this date in world history, Rome wasn't built in a day.
But the Roman Empire was established on this date in the year 27 BC when Caesar Augustus was declared Rome's first emperor. The empire would dominate a large region of the world for hundreds of years. It was on this date in 1919 that U.S. states ratified the 18th Amendment to the Constitution. It would take effect the next year and prohibit the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors. Prohibition was repealed in 1933. And on January 16, 1991, the Persian Gulf War began in that region of the Middle East. It was when the United States led dozens of countries to force the Iraqi military out of neighboring Kuwait, which Iraq had invaded the year before. The Gulf War lasted 6 weeks and resulted in a resounding Iraqi defeat, though its leader remained in power.
Word of knowledge. Neil Armstrong was first, but who was the last person to walk on the moon? Buzz Aldrin, Jim Lovell, Alan Shepard, Eugene Cernan. In December of 1972, the last human footprints were left on the moon. They belonged to Apollo 17 commander Eugene Cernan.
3, 2, 1. Ignition.
SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket blasted off from Florida on Wednesday, sending 2 commercial moon landers into space. It's an unusual double moonshot launch that highlights the global rush to explore the lunar surface. Countries and private companies worldwide have been aiming for the moon in recent years. They have an eye on its potential to host astronaut bases, as well as possible resources that could be mined for in-space applications. It's turning Earth's natural satellite into a stage for national prestige and geopolitical competition, with echoes of the Cold War-era space race. The U.S. Space Agency has a goal to send humans back to the moon for the first time since 1972 by 2027, though that will likely be pushed back. While China plans to put its own crews on the lunar surface by 2030, following a series of robotic missions. NASA's move to fund public-private missions like Firefly's Blue Ghost is aimed at studying the moon's surface and stimulating private lunar demand before the agency sends humans there through its Artemis program. But it faces potential changes with the incoming administration of Donald Trump. The president-elect has largely sided with SpaceX CEO Elon Musk's vision to focus heavily on Mars.
You get a sense from that how different presidential administrations have different priorities when it comes to what happens next in space. Ongoing challenges include funding for these projects. Some critics question whether they're worth the cost. And there are debates about whether manned missions to the moon or Mars are worth the risk to astronauts, with rovers and drones increasingly taking on much of the research and exploration.
Where in the world? This is a Central European country that borders 8 others. Many consider it the birthplace of classical music because several famous composers were born here. Its official language is German, but its capital is Vienna. This is Austria, a nation of around 9 million people.
And we're excited to have some of those people watching our show. From the town of Braunau in Austria, a very warm welcome to Coach Fiura's class. Great to see you at Bundesgymnasium und Bundesrealgymnasium. Ich habe ein bisschen Deutsch in der Schule studiert. Next, from the town of Frisco, Colorado, we see Mr. Holmes' class is online. Snowy Peaks Junior-Senior High School is in the Centennial State. And Black Butte High School is watching from Wyoming. Hello to the Bears and Mr. Allison's class. The city of Rock Springs is in the Cowboy State.
This dot in the distance caught the attention of a pair of outdoorsmen enjoying a nice day on the water.
Originally, it almost looked like maybe a whale or a dead whale or something.
Upon closer inspection, they couldn't believe their eyes. A fellow sailor sitting on a capsized boat off the coast of Massachusetts. Joe Torme and Nick Whitbeck whipped into action, speeding over to the castaway to offer assistance.
I can't imagine how scared you could be in a situation like that where you can't call, you can just wave your hands.
The man said the boat flipped so fast he was thrown overboard, dropped his phone in the drink, and couldn't call for help. He tried to flag down boats for a full hour before our pair stopped to lend a hand. Joe and Nick got a life jacket on the stranded man and helped get him to the safety of a Coast Guard craft. They hope to see him out on the water again despite this unfortunate incident.
He's definitely, getting the boat fixed, and hopefully we'll see him out there fishing again at some point on the right side of the boat this time.
You have to look closely to see what's going on here. What might seem like a look ma no hands moment is actually the result of a rescue. Rangers at Northern California's Mount Shasta, that's how you have to say it, Shasta, they recently came across a goose that had somehow gotten stuck in an old ski bowl at an elevation of 10,000 feet. Well, they're rescuers, so they rescued it, giving the bird a ride down the mountain to a local pond. To duck out on the loose goose, taking flight while leaving it out on a wedge to Goslinger like a cliffhanger would have been a foul idea with nothing to skein but web defeat, and it just wouldn't fit the bill. We're glad they cited it. As I've said before, what's good for a goose is good for a gander. I'm Carl, a goose for the world from A to Z. Means the world to have you watching, and we hope to ski again tomorrow right here